Can I go back to microphone 2?
Absolutely. Hello, my name is Adam Bumpus. I'm from the Sauder School of Business here in Vancouver. And I wanted to draw actually on some of these equity issues and thinking about COP15 in terms of geopolitics and thinking about what happened there and the power play that happened in that small room at the end of the conference, which actually dictated the outcome. And I was wondering, and building on what Graham talked about and David on in creating this process for harmonization, to what extent do you see business as the stitches for that, to help level the playing field, the geopolitical playing field within the countries that multinationals work in? Because a lot of the investment is happening in these countries, and a lot of the governments really need that investment to happen. And a lot of my work has been in Latin America, working with communities on clean development mechanism projects, on low carbon projects. And the people in lots of these indigenous communities, when the project is done well, are really happy with this finance that's coming in from international energy companies or even mining companies who are working with the communities. So to what extent do we see businesses underpinning and creating the stitches for harmonizing these different frameworks and regulatory frameworks, but also providing the incentive for public support for a broader climate change movement within developing countries? And I think, is that a segue to moving to something which is at a multinational level, sort of multilateral level? How does business underpin these changes?
Oh, I see 3 hands. Well, I'll start with David.
Just a quick response. I think that, I look at the work that Offsetters is doing and the kind of work that we're seeing happening in developing countries around, low carbon emitting stoves and things that really make a difference to people on the ground in extreme poverty. Sure, we can be early adopters in making sure those things get disseminated in the areas where we have influence, but I would put it back to the academic community, and you being from UBC, that really in terms of the stitching that needs to be going on, it's actually recording and witnessing the pragmatic results from a credible third party that's going to make a difference. So I would say, and maybe that's the answer you're looking for, but I would say there's a role there for the academic community.
Dan?
I would just say that we are investing in some developing countries. We're going to build a plant in India and so forth. And to me, it's businesses putting their latest technology in those investments. That they don't put, the technology just 15 years ago. They take the latest technology and employ it in those markets for local consumption. All of our plants, and we manufacture on 4 continents and so forth, it's all to service local markets and give the latest technology to raise the standard of living for the people that live there, and give them our best technology for those marketplaces. So multinational companies that invest in those emerging markets, to me, like us, are going to give the latest technology and raise the standard of living there.
Dan Gagnon?
And as far as policy goes, I'll put it over here.
Well, I want to address Joan's question.
Sure.
I mean, in a way that's very pragmatic. You have to remember, no matter how big a multinational company is or how well-intentioned it is not government. It is not elected. It is not accountable to anybody but its shareholders and to society in general. So you can blame them, you can incentivize them, you can celebrate the ones who do the right things for the right reasons. But they're certainly not governments. Secondly, I think there is an equity issue. There's a huge equity issue. People have raised it around the table. Mm-hmm. In many ways, the leading companies around the world put poverty alleviation in the communities in which they work as a priority. If you go on the World Business Council for Sustainable Development site, you'll see it there. You'll see it there as well coming out of the consultations in Davos this year. What we need for multinationals to be able to enhance their contribution on the equity balance are for governments to give us not the incentives, but the framework that will allow us to do it. If governments can do that, then I think, Joan, you'll find that there won't be a lack of activities on the part of business. It's a reality. I don't like it. I'd like to change it. I've been in this field for a long time. All we can do is keep pressuring. It's also another reason why, I don't know what stitches mean. I have visions of a bar whenever I think of stitches. I don't know why. But the new channels, the new involvement also has to let these large global companies bring forward their best practices in terms of working with communities and solving some of the poverty issues, some of the experiences that they've had on the ground, because they're meaningful. I lived through some of them, and I can tell you, I've gone into communities where the only thing I could do was, well, maybe not a manly thing to do, was really cry about just how bad it was. And, you know, through rigorous work over a number of years, come back really feeling good about what my company at the time was able to achieve in a community. And I have to tell you that in my experience, most of the work where we've had success have involved not just the community, but the women in those communities, especially in developing countries, because it's the women who are the caretakers and the educators and the ones who are a dynamic force in those communities. Sure. So that was an extremely valuable lesson for me that I've never forgotten, and I hope that we'll be able to do, as business, we'll be able to do more of that work on the ground.
Microphone 3.
Hi there, my name is Susanna Hawes-Lyons, and I'm a student at UBC's Institute for Resources, Environment, and Sustainability. I'm also live blogging for planningpool.com. So my question is, we talked a little bit about, well, a lot actually, about how industry cannot wait for government to come up with a better regulation. Instead, that, in the words of Daniel Hendricks, we need to just get on with it. And so I'm wondering from you folks up there is, what's getting in the way of other companies from just getting on with it? You know, we've got 10,000 people perhaps attending here today, and so there is clearly more momentum, but the worldwide economy has not responded yet. There's a lot of conversation, but not a lot of change. So here are 4 examples of corporations that are really considering how it is that they're going to change the world through their own work and create a more sustainable world. And so particularly I'm wondering, what's getting in the way? We've talked about sharing success examples, but is there, you know, other key levers that you would apply? You know, is the moral imperative even a question to bring into the business conversation? And then lastly, as leaders in this effort, what is your role in ensuring that the top 50 companies actually do start changing the way they do business? Thank you.
Thank you.
That's a lot of questions.
Yes.
I can only relate to our industry. And I can relate to the journey that Interface went on. And we would have never gotten where we got without Ray Anderson, who was a visionary.
Yeah.
And so the reason companies don't get on with it is because their CEO doesn't get it, in my opinion. It's tough work. And there's a lot of, I think somebody down here mentioned the ROI investment. You know, a lot of this gets stopped by the financial guys. When
You were a CFO, right?
I was a CFO, and I had some pretty interesting moments with our founder, Ray Anderson. Because I was always taking what we call CEAs, were capital expenditure authorizations, and I would just throw them aside and not sign them and wait for Ray to walk in for me to be forced to sign them. But it's tough, and you have to tap into a higher purpose with your people. You have to have a believer. You have to be willing to say that when I make this investment, that we're going to make improvements in that investment, and the ROI will improve. But if I'm looking for a payback of 35%, I'm not going to get it on paper. But the thing that people forget is the benefit with your customer base. I've got one example where I became a believer was Ray Anderson wanted to put the largest solar array in City of Industry in California. And it had a 99-year payback. And I just refused to approve that CA. And it was a pretty significant investment. And the government was paying for 75% of it. And Ray finally walked in my office and he said, just sign the damn thing, Dan. And I said, well, Ray, there's no payback. And he says, what about if we made solar-made carpet? He said, this solar array will make solar-made carpet. And I'll be darned if we didn't have the biggest project in California because we sold them solar-made carpet. And it's just the marketplace and what you'll get on the sales side of the equation doesn't get factored in at the CFO level, that return on investment. And you have to have a lot of things on faith. And that's hard because you have shareholders, you have a board, and a lot of them say, what's the return this quarter? You know, what's the return this year? And those are tough decisions you have to make, and you have to have a board that's willing to make a longer-term investment in that strategy. And Wall Street hated interface. From 1994 to 2004, they hated interface. They called us a bunch of tree huggers. You know, today we're sort of the darling on Wall Street because we're green. But you have to change the paradigm, and you have to have a CEO that's willing to go the whole road, to take those risks.
Graham?
A lot of them aren't.
Yeah, so I think that's the key point. It is about the chief executive and the leadership that his executive leaders set for the company. It is about making the case for getting on with what you're getting on with, so that the shareholders understand and value what you do. So that's going to be different for different folks. And you know, it is tough making those cases on occasion, but certainly I see one of my roles within Royal Dutch Shell to make that case. That's why we have this job. If it was easy, we wouldn't need me. So we work hard to stay focused on what we believe are the right getting on with it things, and then to make sure that we deliver those and explain clearly, both to the public at large, because those are the customers, and to the investors, why doing these things makes sense. And that's what builds the momentum that carries the program forward.
Now, we're running out of time. Folks, I've got 3 questioners. And so can I ask you if you would keep your questions short? And maybe I'll let the 3 questioners ask their questions, and then we'll have a final round. Okay, so we have quick wins, role of government, role of business, and sectoral for target. So, Graham.
Quick wins vital, both internally to demonstrate that things can be done, and for consumers so that they can believe solutions can be delivered. Absolutely, it's a key focus. Second thing, governments versus corporations. So at the risk of making this even more obscure, I'm going to say what we do a lot is polarize the conversation so that we end up with an or choice. It's either these guys or it's those guys. Right. It's either this or it's that.
Right.
And this problem is not amenable to or dialectic. This is an and conversation.
Both
and this is what's so hard in this space. So much of it is an and conversation, and sometimes it's multiple ands. So it isn't governments or corporations. It is governments and corporations, and that's why it's hard. Last bit, sectors, yes, could well be an essential part of the mix. Could regard forestry as a sectoral kind of an agreement, and I think at least some of us did mention the fact that we thought that and REDD+ were possibly good exemplars of how things could be progressed.
Dan, since you're always so crisp, last word to you.
Well, I would say on the quick wins, you clearly have to have quick wins, and I agree with David 100%. You know, you have to give the people on the floor the license to succeed and fail. And that's a big part of the failure part. Interface introduced the most sustainable product the industry ever saw called selenium, and it was 100% product failure. And nobody lost their job over that. We learned from that. So the quick wins are there because success breeds success breeds success. But it does start at the CEO level and then gives people a license to innovate and fund those innovation ideas. As far as government goes, level the playing field. I agree with David again. Create a framework where you've got investment that creates innovation, but the companies are the ones that are going to have to execute those innovative ideas that government helps fund.
If you'd please join me in thanking the panel.